Yo, what's up guys? Snowa here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Week 12 Monday Night Football Showdown slate on Draftkings. We got the Seahawks and the Washington football team playing on Monday night. As always guys, we're going to talk through this Showdown slate. We're going to break everything down, go from top to bottom, really hit on all the playable options, all the guys that I do have interest in. And then towards the end of the video, we'll kind of talk through roster construction, how I'm looking to build out my lineups, who I like to play at captain. You know, if there's any correlation you should be focusing on, if you should be correlating your lineups, we can discuss that as well. But as always, before we get started, please do hit the like button, guys. I appreciate all the likes. Hit the subscribe button as well if you are new here. And if you have not yet, check out the sponsor of the video, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a player prop based DFS site where you're picking the over or the under on players' projections. They already have a bunch of stuff posted for Monday night's game. You can take a look at their board. You can see everything they have. They have passing yards for the quarterbacks. They have rushing yards for running backs, receiving yards for receivers. Basically, player props, and then they have fantasy point projection as well. You can take a look at all the fantasy point projections they have for tonight's game. You can go over or under on a player's projection if you have a good lean either way. You have to make at least 2 picks, but you can make up to 5 picks, and you can win up to 10x your money on PrizePicks. So if you guys want to sign up, if you have not yet, sign up, use code NOAH, and they will match your first deposit. PrizePicks will give you a free bet up to $100 when you do sign up with my code, and you can make some picks for yourself. Check out their board and see what you like for Monday night's game. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this Showdown slate. We're going to start off at the top. So Russell Wilson, most expensive option, $11K. If you want to play him in the flex, you want to play Russ at captain. He's $16,500. I think Russ on a Showdown slate like this is going to be a top option. I know he has not been good lately, and especially since he's come back from that finger injury or that thumb injury, whatever he had. He hasn't been great. 7.6 DK points against Green Bay, and then last week against Arizona in a game where you thought Russ would probably do well. Really struggled, only 8 DK points in that game. He has yet to throw a touchdown in the 2 games that he's played since coming back from injury. But this is a really good spot. Washington's defense has been really bad this year, especially like against the air or through the air. This is a team that you can really beat through the air against, quarterbacks, receivers. Have had a lot of success against Washington so far this year. In terms of fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, Washington actually does lead the league in terms of fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. And looking at wide receivers, we're going to talk about the Seattle receivers in a second. They're allowing the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. So this is a really good spot for Russ. This is a team you can definitely beat through the air. This Washington defense is not good, especially through the air. They've struggled this year. They're dealing with some injuries too, like Chase Young. He's out right now. I think Montez Sweat's out right now. Their D-line really not healthy. So I don't see them getting a ton of pressure on Russell Wilson. He should have a lot of time in the pocket. I know he's not been good, but I really like Russell Wilson to finally put up a good game here. He's definitely one of the top options on this slate, in my opinion. I think at $11K, he feels like one of the safer options as well. Definitely someone I'd want to be playing in cash games. I think in tournaments, he's going to project out as a top play. Am I going to play Russell Wilson at captain? Probably not, because I think Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, I'd be a lot more likely to play those guys at captain. But Russ is definitely going to be a staple in my lineups on this Showdown slate. And then on the other side with Taylor Heinicke, I think he's a fine play as well at $9,800. I probably still would prefer Russ over Heinicke, even though Heinicke has been really good lately. It's a pretty good spot for him too. Like Seattle's defense is not very good either. This is a game that I think does have a little bit of sneaky shootout potential, just because I don't think both defenses are very good. We got a 47 total in this game with a 1-point spread. So Vegas for the most part is expecting somewhat of a high-scoring game and expected to be a close game as well. I think Heinicke sets up pretty well here at $9,800. He's firmly in play too. I like both quarterbacks quite a bit on this slate. Normally, the quarterbacks are going to be priorities for me, and I think definitely here, if I had to pick one of the two, I'd prefer Russ over Heinicke, but I like both quarterbacks quite a bit. And then the receivers, all these pay-up receivers, Terry McLaurin, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of these guys. Terry McLaurin just continues to be an alpha wide receiver, getting 7, 8, 9 targets a game. Has a ton of upside. We've seen him, put up 100+ yards multiple times this year. The Seattle secondary is not good. This is a matchup that Terry McLaurin should have a lot of success in. I think he's one of the better captain options. I think he's one of the guys you can play at captain that gives you a lot of upside. We know Terry McLaurin can go for 25, 30 DraftKings points. He can get 7 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. So really like Terry McLaurin. I think Tyler Lockett probably doesn't get nearly as much ownership. If you want to be a little bit different, I think Tyler Lockett's someone you could definitely use in the captain spot too. Straight up, I would prefer Terry McLaurin, but Lockett, since Russell Wilson's come back, he did have a pretty big game last week against Arizona, even though the team struggled as a whole. Tyler Lockett did still have 115 yards on 4 catches, 18 DK points. I like Tyler Lockett a decent amount too. I would prefer Terry McLaurin though, just straight up. And given the savings, I think I would take DK over Lockett. Now, when it comes to picking between DK and Lockett, Like it's so tough to choose between the two. Most weeks they're going to project very closely. Usually whichever one's lower owned or whichever one's cheaper is the one I prefer. Given the savings you get dropping down from Lockett to Metcalf, I think I do prefer DK Metcalf. And DK Metcalf, just one of these guys with a ton of upside. He's been super inconsistent. We've seen somewhat of a low floor from DK Metcalf, but we know that big ceiling is there, especially on weeks where Russell Wilson throws the ball a lot. You'll see those games where Russell Wilson will throw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a lot of times those are the weeks where DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, one of the two, usually pops off. And we've seen DK Metcalf has a lot of upside. He's got a lot of big play upside. He probably is one of my favorite pay-up options in general. I'm just really going to bank on the talent of DK Metcalf. I like the price savings you get dropping down from McLaurin and Lockett to DK. So if I had to rank the pay-up receivers, factoring in price tag, I would probably say DK number 1, McLaurin number 2, Lockett 3. But all these guys look like really solid options. I think they're all very strong plays. Obviously, on a single game showdown slate, you can't go wrong with any of those guys. But then you get to the running backs. So you got Antonio Gibson at 8,600. You got J.D. McKissic at 7,200. Antonio Gibson here against the Seattle defense, I do like a decent amount, just because Seattle's defense so far this year against the run, they really haven't been that good. In terms of rushing yards allowed to running backs, they're about they're top 10 in terms of rushing yards allowed to running backs. In terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs, they've allowed the third most fantasy points, or tied for second with the Lions. So Seattle's really struggled defending running backs this year. They've allowed a lot of fantasy points to the RB position. I think Antonio Gibson does set up pretty well here. This is a game that I think for the most part we'll see a pretty neutral game script. I don't expect one team or the other to get like a big lead. Antonio Gibson usually does thrive in games that stay close. When games go negatively for him is when Washington gets down a lot, and then you'll see J.D. McKissic out there a lot catching passes, because Antonio Gibson, they use him a little bit in the passing game, but not as much as you would like. Last week against Carolina, he didn't get a single target, which is a little bit concerning. But in a game like this, with a 1-point spread where you expect the game to stay close, I think we probably do get 12 to 15 carries for Antonio Gibson. Maybe he gets a couple targets. He's going to probably get all the goal line work if they do get near the goal line. So pretty good bet to score a touchdown. His upside compared to Metcalf and Lockett and McLaurin, I don't know if it's as high, but I think Antonio Gibson's firmly in play. Now, J.D. McKissic at his price tag, I don't love. I think J.D. McKissic really does well in games where Washington's playing from behind, like I said, where they're having to throw a lot. We will see J.D. McKissic, his snaps will go up in those type of games. With a game like this, with a neutral game script, where it's expected to be a close game, I think we'll probably see a little bit more Antonio Gibson here than we will McKissic. But McKissic has shown some upside this year. He's at his price tag, you're going to need a touchdown. He's not really going to get there on just catches alone, unless things go really sideways and Seattle gets a huge lead, and then McKissic's just out there catching a bunch of dump offs. Unless that happens, I don't see him being a guy you probably have to have at his price tag. Now on a showdown slate, anything could happen, but at 7,200, I don't love McKissic at his price point. I would definitely rather play some of these guys we've already talked about. Alex Collins going to continue to be the number 1 running back for Seattle. At 6,600, he does feel a little underpriced for a number 1 running back. The only concern is that Alex Collins he hasn't been very good. You look at the game log, he's gotten at least 10 carries in 3 straight games, but he's just been super inefficient as a runner, only averaging 3-4 yards a carry. He's not getting any usage in the passing game either. Alex Collins, I think he's playable here. I just don't know what his upside is. He is definitely touchdown dependent. If he doesn't score a touchdown, he is very likely to disappoint at his salary. But we have seen games where he does get into the end zone, can score 15, 20 DK points. I'll be interested to see what his ownership is. I think if Alex Collins is going to be a guy that no one plays, then I'd be more likely to go there. But if everyone's going to play Alex Collins just because he's a number 1 running back and he's only 6,600, then I'd probably just shy away, just because we've seen, even when Alex Collins gets 10, 15 touches, he can be really inefficient, doesn't offer a ton of upside. He's very touchdown dependent. So not in love with Alex Collins, to be honest with you. Gerald Everett is 6,200. His price, it's a little bit higher than I would like to pay, but he has really kind of taken over the number 1 tight end role for the Seahawks. Last week, I know he played on a lot of snaps. It's 86% of the snaps for Gerald Everett. He's basically become like an every down tight end. Gerald Everett, I think, is a pretty good pass catcher in general. He's another guy that kind of feels touchdown dependent. I know he had that game against Green Bay where he caught 8 balls, but normally he's not going to get 8 receptions. Normally he's going to see probably 5-6 targets. You probably got to hope that he gets 4 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. He's playable at 6,200, but another guy that I don't really love at his price tag. We can kind of talk about some value, though. There are some cheap plays I do like down here. First off, DeAndre Carter, 5,600. Like, the price tag on DeAndre Carter, I don't love. We are going to need to keep an eye on some of the injuries for Washington. So Curtis Samuel could be back for this game. Curtis Samuel's been injured like all season. He's played like 2 games, and I think, when he came back, or he played in that Atlanta game, and then he played the week after that against New Orleans, and he got injured again. But he hasn't played since week 5. There's a chance he could play Monday night. If he does wind up playing, that's going to make things a little bit iffy with these Washington pass catchers. Outside of Terry McLaurin, like, there's no Washington receivers that I have a lot of confidence in besides McLaurin. DeAndre Carter, Curtis Samuel, Adam Humphries, who's questionable too. Like, I guess all these guys are dart throws because they're just going to be on the field enough to where they could definitely, catch a touchdown. But at their price tags, like with Carter being 5,600, even with Curtis Samuel being 5K, I don't love any of these guys. I think Samuel is like the most talented of all their receivers, not named McLaurin. But I'm definitely worried about, his pitch count. Like, I don't expect him to play a full allotment of snaps. In the 2 games he's played this year, I know he's been limited in both games. Obviously, the New Orleans game, he got injured, so we don't want to look too much into that one. But in that game against Atlanta back in week 4, he only played 37% of the snaps. I think if Curtis Samuel does play here, he's going to be on a limit, which is just not going to make him that interesting. And it's going to take away from guys like DeAndre Carter and Adam Humphries and Cam Sims. I will say, though, Logan Thomas is probably my favorite Washington pass catcher outside of McLaurin. Logan Thomas is expected to return from injured reserve, and I'm assuming he's going to get back into his, every down tight end role. So Logan Thomas so far this year has played 4 games. I think week 4 against Atlanta, that was the game that he got injured in very early on, like early in the 4th quarter, he got injured in that game. But so far this season, in the 3 games he's played where he wasn't injured, he played every single snap. He played 100% of the snaps in weeks 1, 2, and 3. It's his first game back from IR. He's coming back from a hamstring injury. You never know how guys are going to be used coming back from the IR. But given that Ricky Seals-Jones is doubtful, like with Ricky Seals-Jones not expected to play, he's their backup tight end. I think they're just going to play Logan Thomas like every snap because I don't think they really want to give, I forgot John Bates. Yeah, I don't think they want to give like John Bates a ton of opportunity. John Bates did get some opportunity last week, but that was just because Thomas and RSJ were both out. Now with Thomas returning, I don't think John Bates is really going to play much. So I'm expecting Logan Thomas to probably be used like almost like an every down tight end. And at 4,800, he does stand out as one of the better value plays on the slate. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of risk because he's coming back from injured reserve. He could be on a pitch count. But given that, RSJ is doubtful, I think Logan Thomas probably steps in and fills that number 1 tight end, or he's going to fill the number 1 tight end role. But, it's just a question of how many snaps does he play. At 4,800, I'm willing to just bank on him as a true talent. I mean, we've seen Logan Thomas be pretty productive in this tight end role with Washington, so far this year in the few games he's played, and last season when he played. He's been pretty good as a tight end pass catcher. So for 4,800, I think Logan Thomas is a really good value play that does offer some upside. I like him quite a bit. The defenses I don't love on the slate. Defenses can always get there on like a pick 6 or a scoop and score or a return touchdown, but I'm just going to bank on that not happening. The kickers, I think, are pretty solid values here. There's not a ton of standout cheap plays on this slate outside of like Logan Thomas, so if you want to play one of the 2 kickers, I am totally fine with that. As we mentioned earlier, with Curtis Samuel potentially coming back, how is that going to affect the snaps for DeAndre Carter, for Cam Sims? Like Cam Sims at 3,800, he's seen 2 targets in 4 of his last 5 games. Probably doesn't get any more than that, though. Like last week, I don't think Cam Sims really played on that many snaps. He literally played on 16% of the snaps last week, so he's going to be a tough guy to roster. He's touchdown or bust, I would say. I think Adam Humphries, if he plays, might be the best option this cheap. Now, Adam Humphries, so far this season with Washington, has really shown no upside. Like his best game this year is 11 DK points, where he caught 7 balls for 44 yards. He's a slot receiver. He's a guy that runs a lot of low A-dot routes. He doesn't really run a ton of deep routes down the field. He just he's like a Hunter Renfrow kind of. He just kind of runs in the middle of the field, gets a lot of 6-7 yard catches. For 2,800, if he plays, I think he's a viable cheap play. I mean, so far this season when he has played, he's played on at least like 60% of the snaps in a large majority of the games he's played in this year. Again, they're going to kind of use him as a slot receiver. So for 2,800, he might be one of the better cheap punt plays if you are going to go this cheap. Keep an eye on the injury report. We'll get, inactives will come out an hour and a half before kickoff. If Adam Humphries is active, I think at 2,800, he's definitely a viable cheap play you could go to. Now, maybe with Curtis Samuel coming back, maybe he loses a little bit of snaps, but for his price tag with how low it is, I think he'd still be okay. Freddie Swain at 2,200, He's the wide receiver 3 for Seattle. He doesn't really offer a ton of upside, but he's going to play on enough snaps to where you can maybe get lucky and he breaks off a long touchdown catch or he just catches a touchdown. I mean, so far this year, like the last two out of his last 3 games, he's played at least 65% of the snaps. I mean, most games this year, he's played on 60 to 70% of the snaps. For 2,200, he's viable. I will say that Eskridge, I don't know, or Eskridge, he has been kind of playing a little bit more lately. So last week, Freddie Swaim only played on 41% of the snaps. Eskridge got up to 22%. So I think they're going to try and involve him a little bit more. I don't know if I'd want to play him, but he's $200. If you need a cheap punt play, like he might be playable. There's really no one I love at $200, but I think Eskridge would be fine. Diami Brown was someone we kind of played earlier in the year. I remember he was kind of chalky on one of the main slates earlier this season due to injury. I think it was with Curtis Samuel and someone else was out. Diami Brown kind of stood out as a value play earlier in the year. Now his playing time's kind of really gone down. I mean, the last 2 weeks he's only played on 11 and 13% of the snaps, so going to be tough to go to him too. I don't see too much value that I really love down here. Like Brown's 200, Eskridge is 200. I don't love either one of those guys, but I guess they're playable. They could always catch a touchdown. Just kind of you get lucky there. But I think in terms of value plays, Logan Thomas I like a lot, assuming he plays. The kickers I think are solid values, and then Adam Humphries, if he plays for 2,800, he's a viable cheap play too. But that's probably it for the player pool, guys. I think we kind of talked about like all the playable options. So real quick, talking about roster construction for this slate. I think this is a slate where, in terms of captain options, I really want to be focusing on these elite wide receivers. So Terry McLaurin, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. These are the guys I do like trying to play at captain. Now, you could definitely play like Antonio Gibson at captain. If you wanted to play the quarterbacks at captain, I think that'd be fine too. But I definitely like McLaurin and DK the most in the captain spot. I think DK, given the savings, is my favorite. If I'm playing DK at captain, I try to pair the quarterback with the receiver. If I'm assuming the receiver has a big game, that probably means the quarterback is having a big game as well, or at least he's contributing to the receiver having a big game. So if I'm playing DK at captain, I like pairing him with Russell Wilson. After you do that, you got $48.50 left per player. We can plug in, Logan Thomas as our value play, who I do like a lot, assuming he plays. After that, we're left with $7K per player. So now we can kind of, we could go like Adam Humphries as a punt option, and that leaves us $9,100 left per player. So we could go Heineke and McKissick maybe. I don't love that. We can maybe go Terry McLaurin though, or Terry McLaurin and McKissick, kind of the same thing. God, I don't really want to play McKissick at 7,200. So I don't know what we could do with this build. We can maybe take out Humphries, maybe play one of the kickers instead, and then go like, let's see if there's anyone down here in like the 5K range. I mean, not much down here that I really love. I guess you could play like Curtis Samuel, but I'm definitely worried about like a pitch count for him. You could play DJ Dallas. We didn't even talk about DJ Dallas. He's going to be the backup behind Alex Collins. He's probably going to get some usage in the passing game. I think he is going to be like the guy that plays on third downs. I think in passing situations, DJ Dallas will be on the field because they really don't have any other running backs. Rashad Penny's out. Travis Homer's out. So I think Alex Collins is going to be kind of the first and second down back. And then I think DJ Dallas is going to get involved in passing situations. Maybe he catches like 4 or 5 balls, gets a couple carries, maybe falls into the end zone, gets a touchdown or something. I guess he could be playable at 5,200 if you wanted to play him. I don't think he gets much ownership. Then you could play, like Terry McLaurin or something. That's a build that you could do for sure. We could always, play a different captain. We could definitely pay up for McLaurin at captain and then pair him with Taylor Heineke. Maybe could play both quarterbacks in this build, although, it might be a little bit tough. We could play Logan Thomas, the kicker, one of the kickers, and then, play like Adam Humphries or something. So that's kind of another build that you could do that I don't mind. Playing Russell Wilson without any pass catchers, I don't love that. I don't really like playing 5 Washington guys with just Russell Wilson as the lone Seattle player. I feel like that's pretty unlikely to work out. But you could take out one of the kickers and put in, Dallas if you wanted to go that route. But that's just kind of some builds I like for the Showdown slate, guys. It's a pretty interesting slate. I think there's a lot of good pay-up options with the quarterbacks, with these elite receivers. It's going to come down to, which value plays hit. And we kind of talked about my favorite values, the guys I like for cheap, Logan Thomas. I think the kickers are going to be solid values. I think they'll wind up being decent. And I think Adam Humphries as a true punt play, 2,800, if he plays, I kind of like as a cheap option too. But I think that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed, please do hit the like button down below. Hit the subscribe button as well if you have not yet. And check out the sponsor of the video, PrizePicks. Go sign up for PrizePicks. Use code NOAH, and they will match your first deposit, give you a free bet up to $100. And you can take a look at the entire board they have for Monday night's game. You can make some picks for yourself. Go over or under on a player's projection. You have to make at least 2 picks. You can make up to 5 picks, potentially win up to 10x your money on Prize Picks. So check them out, sign up, use code NOAH when you do, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100. But best of luck tonight, guys. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.